This is Brother Parrott again, coming to you with the word of the Lord. I'd like to start today and give us a summary of what we've covered up to this point. You remember we covered this creation stage, and we won't start there, but we're going to start in the life of Abraham in the patriarchal stage, or the dispensation of promise. And I'd like to give you some steps here and a sort of an outline, which I meant to do earlier, but I've given it to you already anyway, but I want to sort of summarize the things that we've covered so far. Number one, Abraham's conversion at Ur. He had a sevenfold promise. I will make of thee a great nation. I will bless thee. I will make thy name great. Thou shalt be a blessing. I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curseth thee. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Number two, at Haran, his partial obedience. He takes his father and settles in Haran. The sevenfold promise is in Joshua 24:3, Genesis 12:1-4, Genesis 11 verse 31, and Acts chapter 7 verse 2. At Haran, his partial obedience is Genesis 11 verse 31 and 32. Number three, his arrival in Canaan. Genesis 12:4-9. He builds an altar and is promised the land. Number four, his trip to Egypt. The reason is that there was a famine in Canaan. The sin of doubting God and deceit concerning Sarai, his wife. The type, Egypt is the type of the world. The results was seven tragic consequences, and was the result of his lying about Sarai being his sister when it was his wife. Number one, he grieved God. He weakened his own faith. He weakened the faith of Sarai, became a poor testimony to his nephew Lot, and caused Pharaoh to be afflicted, picked up Hagar, the Egyptian handmaid, and provided a bad example for his son Isaac, in Genesis chapter 12, verse 10-20. Then number five, he meets Melchizedek. The background, Genesis 13 and 14. Abraham had won a war and rescued his nephew Lot, and the identity of Melchizedek, some say he was Shem, unknown priest, or some say Christ, and I believe that he was a pre-incarnate form of Jesus Christ. The importance of the meeting with Melchizedek. The four first recorded First Communion, bread and wine, the first mention of the holy city Salem, the first mention of priests, and the first example of tithing before the law was ever given. Number six, the ratification of his covenant. Background, this is in Genesis chapter 15. Then this covenant was announced in Genesis 12:1-4, confirmed in Genesis 13:14-17, and Genesis 15:1-7, and ratified in Genesis 15:8-18. The method employed, it was a blood agreement. It features a land, Palestine, and a people, Israel. The language, three key words, believed, counted, and righteousness. Prophecy involved the 400-year Egyptian captivity and deliverance of Israel. Number seven, his marriage to Hagar, Genesis chapter 16. The plan of Sarah, the plight of Hagar, the aid of an angel, and the birth of Ishmael. Number eight, Abraham at 99, Genesis chapter 17. Some new names. Abram changed to Abraham, the father of nations, to the father of a multitude. Sarai changed to Sarah, a princess. God introduces as introduced as El Shaddai, the fruitful one. A new seal, circumcision, now becomes the sign of God's covenant. Number nine, good news and bad news, Genesis 18 and 19. Abraham was visited by the Lord and 2 angels. The good news, his long-promised heir would be born the next spring. The bad news, God planned to destroy Sodom, Lot's home city. Sodom is destroyed. Only Lot and his 2 daughters survive. Number 10, Abraham in Philistia. During a famine, he again leaves Canaan and lies about Sarah, Genesis 20. The heir of the covenant, number 11. Isaac is born, this is Genesis 21. Hagar and Ishmael are sent away. Number 12. Foreshadows of Calvary. The type 1, the sacrifice of Isaac, Genesis chapter 22. Number 2, the substitute for Isaac. The location, Mount Moriah, thought to be Golgotha. The revelation, a new name for God, Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide. Number 13, the death of Sarah. Sarah dies at 127 years old and is buried in the cave of Machpelah, Genesis 23. Number 14, commanding his servant, Genesis 24. Abraham's command to fetch a bride for Isaac. The servant's prayer, show me the right girl. The Lord's answer, Rebekah is the right one. The scriptural types, this is the most type-filled chapter in the Bible. Abraham is a type of the Holy Ghost or the Father. Isaac is a type of the Son. And the servant is a type of the Holy Spirit also. And Rebekah is a type of the church. Number 15, his marriage to Keturah. She bore him 6 sons, Genesis 25, 1 through 6. The 4th was Midian, the father of the Midianites. His death at 175 years old, Genesis 25, 7 through 10, Hebrews 11, verse 8 through 10. Epitah, Hebrews 11, 8 through 10. By faith, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed, and he went out not knowing whither he went. By faith he sojourned in a land promised, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. And then we studied Isaac, the submissive son. He is offered up by his father Abraham, Genesis 22, 1 through 4. The gentle groom, Genesis 24. Continuing our study here about Isaac, and I think we just said it, but I want to say it again in case the tape didn't catch it. The submissive son, Genesis 22, verse 1 through 4. He is offered up by Isaac, offered up by his father Abraham. The gentle groom, Genesis 24, verse 66, 62 through 67. He meets Rebekah for the first time. The praying parent, Genesis 25, 19 through 26. He prays that God would bless them with children. Rebekah gives birth to twins, Esau and Jacob. The copycat, Genesis 26, 1 through 11. Like his father, he leaves Palestine during a famine. Like his father, he lies about his wife. The willing worker, Genesis 26, verse 17 through 33. Some jealous Philistines had filled up Abraham's wells with debris. Isaac redigs and cleans out those wells. The frustrated father, Genesis 27, 1 through 45. At 138, Isaac feels his death is near. Esau is instructed to prepare him a meal. Okay, at 97, he feels that his death is near. Esau is instructed to prepare him a meal and receive the patriarchal blessing. Rebekah arranges to deceive the dim-eyed Isaac by substituting Jacob. Jacob receives the blessing intended for Esau. Isaac sends Jacob away that his son might escape Esau's revenge. And it was quite some time later, at 138 years of age, that Isaac actually died. Okay, and then we studied partially Jacob, and the devising brother, Genesis 25, verse 27 through 34. He pressures Esau into trading his birthright. The deceitful son, Genesis 27, 6 through 29. He tricks his father to receive the blessing. The dreaming pilgrim, Genesis 28, 10 through 22. He sees a ladder set up from the earth to heaven at Bethel. Angels are ascending and descending upon it. God confirms to him the Abrahamic covenant. Upon awakening, he anoints a rock pile and vows to serve God. The love-struck suitor, Genesis 29, verse 1 through 20. He meets Rachel, his cousin and future wife, beside a well. Here begins one of history's great love stories. He promises Rachel's father Laban, Jacob's uncle and future father-in-law, he will work 7 years for her hand in marriage. The frustrated family man, Genesis 29, verse 21 through Genesis 30, verse 24. He is deceived on his wedding night by Laban, who secretly substitutes Leah, Rachel's older sister, for Rachel. Jacob is furious, but agrees to work yet another 7 years for Rachel. He now has the 2 wives and would gather yet another 2, for both Rachel and Leah present to him their personal handmaids for childbearing purposes. These 4 women would bear Jacob 12 sons and 1 daughter. Leah would bear Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, would bear Dan and Naphtali. Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, would bear Gad and Asher. And Rachel would bear Joseph and Benjamin. And Leah would also bear a daughter named Dinah. The enterprising employee, Genesis 30, 25, verse 2 through chapter 31, verse 55. Jacob goes into business with Laban and becomes a wealthy man. Upon being ordered by God to return home, he breaks camp without telling Laban. Laban chases him down and accuses Jacob, among other things, of stealing his household gods. Laban and Jacob come to a truce and build a memorial pile of stones. The determined wrestler, Genesis 32, verse 1 through Genesis 33, verse 20. Jacob learns that Esau is on his way to meet him riding with 400 men. Filled with fear, Jacob wrestles with God in prayer all night long by the brook Jabbok. He is reassured by God for this, and his name is changed from Jacob to Israel. The ensuing meeting between Israel and Esau is very friendly. The enraged father, Genesis 34, verse 1 through 31, Genesis 35, verse 22, and Genesis 38, verse 1 through 30. Over the sin of murder committed by Levi and Simeon, the boys trick a group of desert men whose leader had seduced Dinah, their sister, into circumcising themselves. On the 3rd day, when they were helpless to defend themselves because of their self-inflicted wounds, Jacob's 2 sons slaughter them like animals. Also over the sin of adultery committed by Reuben. And it came to pass, when Israel dwelt in that land, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard it. Genesis 35, verse 22. Over the sin of adultery committed by Judah, to seek revenge upon Judah for refusing a request of hers, Tamar, his daughter-in-law, disguises herself as a common harlot and entices him into her tent for sexual purposes. Tamar becomes pregnant, and Judah orders her death for immorality until he learns who the father of the child really is. The obedient patriarch, Genesis 35, verse 1 through 15. Jacob is ordered by God back to Bethel. In preparation for his trip, Jacob instructs his household to destroy their idols and prepare their hearts. He builds an altar at Bethel and calls it El Bethel, the God of the house of God. The sorrowing saint. Genesis 35, verse 15 and 16, and Genesis 37, verse 31 through 35. He loses his beloved wife Rachel in childbirth. He bears his father Isaac. He is led to believe that Joseph has been killed and eaten by a wild beast. Thank God. We haven't studied Joseph yet, but we're going to study now one of the topics here over the enraged father over the sin of adultery. And this is going to be in Genesis chapter 38, verse 1 through 30. Genesis 38, 1 through 30. And it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren, turned to a certain Adullamite, whose name was Hira. And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua, and he took her and went in unto her, Judah's wicked sons. And she conceived and bare a son, and he called his name And she conceived again and bare a son, and she called his name Onan. And she yet again conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Shelah. And he was at Chezib when she bare him. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. And Judah said unto Onan, Go in unto thy brother's wife, and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his. And it came to pass, when he went in unto his brother's wife, that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also. Judah's promise to Tamar. Then said Judah to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, Remain a widow at thy father's house, till Shelah my son be grown. For he said, Lest peradventure he die also, as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. And in the process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died. And Judah was comforted, and went up unto his sheep shearers to Timnath, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. The promise broken, commits adultery with Tamar. And it was told Tamar, saying, Behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnath to shear his sheep. And she put forth her widow's garments off from her, and covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place which is by the way to Timnath. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. And when Judah saw her, he thought her to be an harlot, because she had covered her face. And he turned unto her by the way, and said, Go to, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What wilt thou give me, that thou mayest come in unto me? And he said, I will send thee a kid from the flock. And she said, Wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it? And he said, What pledge shall I give thee? And she said, Thy signet, and thy bracelets, and thy staff that is in thine hand. And he gave it her, and came in unto her, and she conceived by him. He condemns Tamar then to be burnt. And she arose and went away, and laid by her veil from her, and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend the Adullamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he found her not. Then he asked the men of the place, saying, Where is the harlot that was openly by the way? And they said, There was no harlot in this place. And he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. And also the men of the place said that there was no harlot in this place. And Judah said, Let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her. And it came to pass about 3 months after that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar thy daughter-in-law hath played the harlot, and also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, Bring her forth, and let her be burnt. Then he repents to protect himself. And when she was brought forth, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, By the man whose these are, am I with child? And she said, Discern, I pray thee, whose are these, the signet, and the bracelets, and staff? And Judah acknowledged them, and said, She hath been more righteous than I, because I gave her not to Shelah my son. And he knew her again no more. Birth of Pharez and Zerah. And it came to pass in the time of her travail, that behold, twins were in her womb. And it came to pass when she travailed, that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, This came out first. And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that behold, his brother came out. And she said, How hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee. Therefore his name was called Pharez, and afterward came out his brother that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zerah. Lord of God. The name Zerah means a rising of light or dawn. Sin of adultery committed by Judah. Although Jacob's name does not occur in this chapter, we may assume he was well aware of the tragic facts and disapproved of them. Judah, Jacob's fourth son, marries a Canaanite girl who bears him 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. Genesis 38, 1-5. His oldest son, marries a girl named Tamar, but God soon kills him for an unrecorded act of wickedness. Judah then commands his second son, Onan, to marry her. He also is soon slain for wickedness. Judah promises Tamar to give her his youngest son, Shelah, in due time, although he secretly had no intention of doing this. Genesis 38, verse 11 and 12. After a while, Tamar realizes this and disguises herself as a common harlot and entices Judah into her tent for sexual purposes. For payment, she demands and receives his signet, bracelet, and staff. Genesis 38, 13-19. Tamar soon becomes pregnant from this relationship. Some 3 months later, an indignant Judah orders her to be burnt to death. Tamar then shows him the signet, bracelets, and staff. A remorseful and doubtless red-faced Judah immediately sets her free. Genesis 38, verse 24-26. Tamar has twins and calls them Pharez and Zerah. Both this Canaanite prostitute woman and her illegitimate firstborn son will later be included through the amazing grace of God in the sacred genealogy of the Lord Jesus Christ. Matthew chapter 1, verse 3. And Judah begat Pharez, and Zerah of Tamar, and Pharez begat Esrom, and Esrom begat Aram. All right, the obedient patriarch, Genesis chapter 35, verse 1-7. Genesis 35, 1-7. And God said unto Jacob, Arise and go to Bethel, and dwell there, and make there an altar unto God that appeared unto thee when thou fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. Then Jacob said unto his household, and to all that were with him, Put away the strange gods that are among you, and be clean, and change your garments, and let us arise and go to Bethel. Go up to Bethel, and I will make there an altar unto God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and was with me in the way which I went. And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods that were in their hand, and all their earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under an oak which is by Shechem. And they journeyed, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were round about them, and they did not pursue after the sons of Jacob. So Jacob came to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan, that is Bethel, he and all that were with him, and he built an altar, and called the place El Bethel, because there God appeared unto him when he fled from the face of his brother. God again reminds Jacob of his previous command to return to Bethel. Genesis 35, verse 1. See also 31, verse 11-13. Chapter 31, 11-13. And the angels of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob, and I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes, and see all the rams which leap upon the cattle, are ring-streaked, speckled, and grizzled, for I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowest a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out of this land, and return into the land of thy kindred. Okay, Hebrews chapter 4, verse 1. Let us therefore fear, lest a promise being left us of entering into his rest, any of you should seem to come short of it. And in verse 9, For there remaineth therefore a rest for the people of God. And then verse 11, let us labor, therefore, to enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief. Jacob had been living in Shechem for 10 years, and Bethel was only 30 miles away. How tragically easy it is to move towards surrender and yet fall short of it, as we just read in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 1, verse 9, and verse 11. Jacob instructs his entire household to destroy their idols, to wash themselves, and to put on fresh clothing in preparation for the Bethel trip. These idols and earrings are then collected and burned or buried under an oak tree near Shechem. This is the first recorded revival in God's Word. Jacob arrives at Bethel and builds an altar there, naming it El Bethel. As we have already seen, the name Bethel means house of God, but El Bethel means the God of the house of God. The difference between these two concepts is the difference between knowing the Word of God and knowing the God of the Word. We are to read the passages of the first to acquaint us with the person of the second. Genesis 35, verse 7. And he built there an altar and called the name of the place El Bethel. Okay, the sorrowing saint. Genesis 35, verse 8 through 29. And Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried beneath Bethel under an oak. And the name of it was called Allon-Bacuth. Oak of weeping is what that means. Allon-Bacuth. All right. Jacob loses in rapid succession 3 beloved ones. His old nurse Deborah in 35 verse 8. So Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried beneath Bethel under an oak, and the name of it was called Allon-Bacuth. This woman first mentioned here apparently came to live with Jacob after the death of her mistress and Jacob's mother, Rebekah. His beloved wife Rachel dies, giving birth to her second son and Jacob's 12th son, who is named Benjamin, son of my right hand. Genesis 35, verse 16 through 20. And they journeyed from Bethel, and there was but a little way to come to Ephrath, and Rachel travailed, and she had hard labor. And it came to pass, when she was in hard labor, that the midwife said unto her, Fear not, for thou shalt have this son also. And it came to pass, as her soul was in departing, for she died, that she called his name Benoni, and that means son of my sorrow, but his father called him Benjamin, or son of my right hand. And Rachel died and was buried in the way of Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. And Jacob set a pillar upon her grave, that is the pillar of Rachel's grave, unto this day. Hallelujah. Okay, now I'm fixing to read chapter 35, verse 9, up through verse 15. Jacob's third division. The Abrahamic covenant is renewed in these verses. God appeared unto Jacob again when he came out of Padan Aram, and blessed him. And God said unto him, Thy name is Jacob, thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall thy name be. And he called his name Israel. And God said unto him, I am God Almighty, be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins. And the land which I gave Abram and Isaac, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land. And God went up from him in the place where he talked with him, and Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, even a pillar of stone, and he poured a drink offering thereon, and he poured oil thereupon. And Jacob called the name of the place where God spake unto him, Bethel. His father Isaac died at the age of 180, and is buried by Jacob and Esau alongside Abraham in the cave of Machpelah at Hebron. I'm going to read from 20 through 27 before we get into the burying of Isaac. And Jacob set a pillar up on her grave unto that day. Okay, and the sin of Reuben. And Israel journeyed and spread his tent beyond the Tower of Edar, And it came to pass, when Israel dwelt in that land, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. Jacob's family is in Canaan. The sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon, and Levi, and Judah, and Issachar, and Zebulun. Sons of Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, Dan, and Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, Gad, and Asher. And these are the sons of Jacob, which were born to him in Padan Aram. And then we're going to study his father Isaac dying at 180 years of age. Genesis 35, verse 27 through 29. And Jacob came into the tent, came unto his father, unto Mamre, unto the city of Arba, which is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac sojourned. And the days of Isaac were 180 years. And Isaac gave up the ghost, and died, and was gathered unto his people, being old and full of days. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. There are two first mentions in these verses. The first mention of the drink offering, 35 verse 14. And Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, and even a pillar of stone, and he poured a drink offering thereon, and poured out oil thereon. The first reference to Bethlehem, 35 verse 19. And Rachel died and was buried in the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. Here Rachel dies, giving birth to the son of Jacob's right hand. Many centuries later, a young virgin would give birth to another baby in Bethlehem. This babe would be known as the son of God's right hand. Genesis chapter 37, and then chapter 39 and 50. The dreams of Joseph. Now we're going to study Joseph now. I'll give you a little outline of Joseph and some of the things that he was called. Joseph, the favored son, in Genesis 37. The dreams of Joseph, the deceit of his brothers, the despair of his father. The faithful steward, Genesis 39. His service, his self-control, and his sufferings. The forgotten servant, Genesis 40. Joseph finds himself in the same cell with Pharaoh's butler and baker, who were also in prison. These two men experienced strange dreams, and Joseph interprets both, predicting that within 3 days the king will free the butler but execute the baker. All this comes true. However, upon his release, the butler forgets all about Joseph. The famed statesman, Genesis 41 through 44. The revelation about Joseph, the elevation of Joseph, the frustration of Joseph's brothers. The forgiving saint, Genesis 45 through 48. Joseph and his brothers, Joseph and his father, Joseph and his sons. The fruitful shade tree, Genesis 49 and 50. He receives his father's blessing. Joseph is a fruitful bow, whose branches run over the wall. His hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. Okay, Genesis 49:22. And he returns his father's body. Joseph also is a foreshadow of the Savior. Joseph in Genesis 37:3, he's beloved by his father. Jesus, Matthew 3:17, this is my beloved son, whom I'm well pleased. Genesis 37:2, regarded themselves as shepherds. John 10:11 through 14, Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. 37:13 and 14 in Genesis, sent by their fathers to their brethren. Luke 20:13, Hebrews 2:12. Is hated by their brethren without a cause. Genesis 37, verse 4, 5, and 8. John 1 and 11. John 7 and 5, and John 15:25. They plotted against by their brethren. Genesis 37, verse 20, and John 11:53. They were severely tempted. Genesis 39, verse 7, and Matthew 4:1. They were taken to Egypt. Genesis 37:26, Matthew 2:14 and 15. They were stripped of their robes, Genesis 37:23, John 19, verse 23 and 24. They were sold for the price of a slave, Genesis 37:28, Matthew 26:15. They were bound, Genesis 39, verse 20, Matthew 27, verse 2. They remained silent and offered no defense, Genesis 39, verse 20, Isaiah 53, verse 7. They were falsely accused, Genesis 39, 16 through 18, Matthew 26, 59 and 60, 59th verse and 60th verse. They experienced God's presence through everything, Genesis 39, verse 2, verse 21, verse 23, and St. John 16, verse 32. They were respected by their jailers, Genesis 39, verse 21, Luke 23, verse 47. Placed with two prisoners, one which was later lost, the other saved, Genesis 40, verse 2 and verse 3, Luke 23, verse 32. Bound, they were both around 30 at the beginning of their ministry, Genesis 41, verse 46, Luke 3, verse 23. Both were highly exalted after their sufferings, Genesis 41, verse 41, and Philippians 2, verse 9 through 11. Both took non-Jewish brides, Genesis 41, verse 45, and Ephesians 3, verse 1 through 12. Both lost to their brethren for a while, Genesis 42, verse 7 and 8, Romans 10, verse 1 through 3, chapter 11 of Romans, verse 7 and 8. Both forgave and restored their repentant brothers, Genesis 45, verse 1 through 15, Zechariah 12, verse 10 through 12. Both visited and honored by all earthly nations, Genesis 41, verse 57, Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2 and 3, and Isaiah chapter 49, verse 6. Joseph, the favored son, Genesis chapter 37. And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. Joseph in Canaan was a model boy. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. He was loved by Jacob. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors, hated by his brethren. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him, and could not speak peaceably unto him. Two dreams of Joseph. Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said to him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. And he told it to his father and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him and said unto him, What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee to the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying. He seeks his brethren. And his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, Do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said unto him, Here am I. And he said to him, Go, I pray thee, see whether it be well with thy brethren, and well with the flocks, and bring me word again. So he sent him out of the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem, and a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, What seekest thou? And he said, I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks. And the man said, They are departed hence, for I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. And Joseph went after his brethren, and found them in Dothan, plot against Joseph. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him, and they said one to another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit, and we will say, Some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, Let us not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands, to deliver him to their father. Again, Joseph cast into a pit. And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him, and they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty, there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes, and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels, bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going down to carry it down to Egypt. A company of Ishmaelites and Midianites, the descendants of Abraham through Hagar and Keturah. And Judah said unto his brethren, What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content. Joseph is sold into Egypt. Then there passed by Midianites merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt. Jacob is deceived by his sons. And Reuben returned unto the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit, and he rent his clothes. And he turned unto his brethren, and said, The child is not, and I, whither shall I go? And they took Joseph's coat, and killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the coat in the blood. And they sent the coat of many colors, and they brought it to their father, and said, This have we found. Know now whether it be thy son's coat or no. And he said, and he knew it, and said, It is my son's coat. An evil beast hath devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces. And Jacob rent his clothes, and put sackcloth upon his loins, and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, I will go down into the grave unto my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him. And the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Here where it says, and all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, it must be talking about his daughters-in-law, because his son's wives, because he only had one daughter that's recorded, and her name was Dinah. All right, the dreams of Joseph. The remaining chapters in Genesis now describe the life of Joseph, Jacob's second youngest son, born to him of his beloved Rachel, Genesis 30:24. Joseph had brought down upon him the wrath of his 10 brethren. 3 factors had led to the sad situation. Because he had reported to his father some of the bad things that the 10 were doing, as we read, Genesis 37, verse 2. Because he had become Jacob's favorite son. To show the special affection, the old man gave Joseph a long-sleeved, brightly colored tunic, Genesis 37, verse 3. Because of Joseph's strange dreams, as the third reason. In one of his dreams, there were all in the field binding sheaves, when suddenly his sheaf stood up, and the sheaves all gathered around it and bowed low before it. Number 2. During his second dream, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down low before him. Genesis 37, verse 9. Joseph is sent from his home in Hebron to Shechem to check on his half-brothers and their grazing flocks. He finally finds them at Dothan, some 15 miles from Shechem and 65 miles from Hebron. The deceit of his brothers. His 10 brothers see him in the distance and determine to kill him. Genesis 37, verse 18. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, Genesis 29:32, apparently had second thoughts, however, for he suggested that they simply throw him into a pit and let him die. Reuben was then planning to secretly return him to his father, Genesis 37, verse 21 and 22. Joseph is stripped of his coat and cast into a pit, Genesis 37:24. Ignoring his pitiful cries, Genesis 42, verse 21, the cruel brothers sat down to eat. Suddenly a slave caravan of Ishmaelites and Midianites came into view en route to Egypt. The 9 brothers made a hasty and heartless decision to sell Joseph as a slave, Genesis chapter 37, verse 25 through 27. Reuben had apparently not been present at the time. Judah is the ringleader in this disgraceful deal. Joseph is sold for 20 pieces of silver, the going price of a slave, and carried into Egypt, Genesis 37, verse 28. Reuben returns and weeps over the action of his brothers that they have taken, Genesis 37, verse 29. The despair of his father. To conceal their horrible crime, they took Joseph's coat and smeared it with blood's goat and deceived Jacob into believing that his beloved son had been killed and eaten by a wild animal, Genesis 37, verse 31 through 35. Joseph is sold as a slave to Potiphar, a captain in Pharaoh's Egyptian palace, Genesis 37, verse 36. That immutable law of retribution, which runs so strongly throughout the Bible, is clearly seen here in this chapter. Jacob, who once deceived his father by using a skin of a kid, Genesis 27, verse 16, where he pretended like he was Esau and got the birthright, is himself now deceived in a similar manner. Okay, in Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 and 8, it said, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. He that soweth to the flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. Let us be not weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not." Okay, Pharaoh. Here's some other examples would include Pharaoh, who ordered the destruction of Israel by the waters of the Red Sea, is another example of divine retribution, was himself drowned there. You know, he wanted to kill them by the Red Sea and just totally destroy them, but he himself and all of his chariots went into the sea after Israel and were drowned themselves. Exodus 14, verse 5, with Exodus 14, verse 28. Korah, who had caused the division in the congregation of Israel, was swallowed up by division in the earth. Numbers 16, verse 1 through 3, was Numbers 16, verse 31 and 32. Haman, who built the gallows to execute a godly Hebrew, later himself was hanged from the same gallows. Esther 5:14 with Esther 7, verse 10. So you see, the divine law of retribution is really a true doctrine of the Word of God. We need to, as Jesus said, do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. The faithful steward in Genesis chapter 39. We're going to read chapter 38. We just read chapter 38. We're going to read chapter 39. We're speaking concerning Joseph now. Joseph is tested in Egypt in Potiphar's house. The faithful steward. We're still in the dispensation of promise and the patriarchal stage. And Joseph was brought down into Egypt, and Pharaoh in Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. God blesses Joseph. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and over all that he had he put it into his hand. And it came to pass from the time that he had made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person, and well favored. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, Lie with me. But he refused and said unto his master's wife, Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. And she caught him by the garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. And it came to pass, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and was fled forth, now Joseph is wrongly accused, that she called unto the men of her house and spake unto them, saying, See, he hath brought in an Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. And it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled and got him out. And she said, and she laid up his garment by her until the Lord came home. And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came in unto me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled. And Joseph is thrown in prison. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in prison. He only had 2 friends left. But the Lord was with Joseph, and showed him mercy, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that the Lord, because the Lord was with him, and that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. His service. Number 1. A. Joseph is sold as a slave to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's Egyptian palace guard. Genesis 38 verse 30 and 39 verse 1. B. Under a blessing of God, the blessings of God, he was quickly entrusted with the entire administration of Potiphar's household. Genesis 39 verse 2 through 6. Number 2, his self-control. A. Joseph is enticed to commit immorality by the wife of Potiphar, but refuses her continued advances. Genesis 39, verse 7 through 10. B. In an act of revenge, she accuses Joseph of rape. Genesis 39, verse 11 through 18. His sufferings. Number 3. Joseph is thrown into prison. Genesis 39, verse 9 through 20. The forgotten servant. Genesis chapter 40. It came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord the king of Egypt, and Pharaoh was wroth against 2 of his officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard to the prison, a place where Jacob was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them, and they continued a season in ward. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. And Joseph came in unto them in the morning, and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his lord's house, saying, Wherefore look ye so sad today? So sadly today. And they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you, the butler's dream now. And the chief butler and told his dream to Joseph, and said to him, In my dream, behold, a vine was set before me, and in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, and her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said unto him, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches of 3 days, yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head, and restore thee into thy place, and thou shalt deliver the Pharaoh's cup into his hand, after the former manner when thou wast his butler. Joseph's request. But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this prison. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. The baker's dream. Now when the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said unto Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head. And in the uppermost basket there was all manner of baked meats for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my head. And Joseph answered and said, This is the interpretation thereof, the 3 baskets of 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds shall eat thy flesh from off thee. The dreams fulfilled, Joseph forgotten by the butler. And it came to pass the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief butler unto his butlership again, and he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgat him. The jail, like Potiphar, soon recognized Joseph's beautiful and talented character and put him in charge of the entire prison administration. Genesis 39, verse 21 through 23. For some reason, the anger of Pharaoh is aroused against both his chief baker and butler, and he sends them to Joseph's prison. Genesis 40, verse 1 through 4. While in the prison, these 2 men have mysterious dreams. God gives Joseph the ability to correctly interpret each dream. A. The details of the butler's dream. He had seen a vine with 3 branches that began to bud and blossom, and soon produced clusters of ripe grapes. In his dream, the butler then squeezed the juice from the grapes and served it to Pharaoh in the royal wine cup. Genesis 40, verse 9 through 11. The meaning of the butler's dream. The 3 branches meant that within 3 days Pharaoh would free him and restore him to his old employment. Joseph then asked the butler to mention him to Pharaoh, and asked him to remember the injustices that he suffered. Genesis 40, verse 12 through 15. The details of the baker's dream. He saw himself carrying upon his head 3 baskets of pastries. The top basket contained special goods for the Pharaoh, but suddenly some birds flew down and ate this food. Genesis 40, verse 16 and 17. The meaning of the baker's dream, it meant that within 3 days that Pharaoh would take off the baker's head and impale his body on a pole, and that the birds would come and pick off his flesh. Genesis 40, verse 18 and 19. 3 days later, on his birthday, the Pharaoh dealt with the butler and baker exactly as Joseph had predicted he would do, but the butler forgot to mention anything about Joseph. Genesis 40, verse 20 through 23. The famed statesman. Genesis chapter 41 through 44. The famed statesman. It came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine and fat-fleshed, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine did eat up those 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke, and he slept and dreamed a second time, and behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. And behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And the interpretation is sought. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream, and one night, I and he, we dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was a man there with us, a young man, an Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted us our dreams to each man according to the dream he did interpret. And it came to pass as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me he restored to my office, and him he hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved himself, and changed his raiment, and came in unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. Dreams related to Joseph. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of the river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored and lean-fleshed, such as I never saw in the land of Egypt for badness. And the lean and ill-favored kine did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored as at the beginning. So I awoke. And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears, good and came up in one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 withered, thin, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me. Now Joseph's getting ready to interpret it now. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, The dream of Pharaoh is one. God has showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land, and the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of the famine following, for it shall be very grievous. And for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice, it is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now therefore, let Pharaoh look out a man, discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. And let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years, and let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And that food shall be for the store to the land against the 7 years of famine which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. Joseph's exaltation, he's made the 2nd ruler. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, Can we find such a man as this is, a man in whom is the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God has showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my house be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, put a gold chain around about his neck. And he made him to ride in the 2nd chariot which he had, and they cried before him, Bow the knee. And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. The marriage of Joseph. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah, that originally an Egyptian word meaning abundance of life. Jerome translated as Savior of the world. And he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, and Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt, the 7 years of plenty. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years the earth brought forth by handfuls. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities, the food of the field, which was round about every city, laid he up in the same. And Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea, very much, and he left numbering, for it was without number. Joseph's family in Egypt. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bare unto him. And Joseph called the name of his firstborn Manasseh, meaning to forget. For God said, He hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. The name of the second called he Ephraim, which means to be fruitful. For God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. The 7 years of famine, and the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land of Egypt was ended, and the 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said. And the dearth was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread, and Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he saith to you do. The authority of Joseph. And the famine was over all the face of the earth, and Joseph opened all the storehouses, and sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. All the countries came into Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because that the famine was sore in all the lands. Famine was sore in all the lands. Joseph and his brethren. The first trip to Joseph's brethren to Egypt. Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, Why do you look one upon another? And he said, Behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. And Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob sent not with his brethren, for he said, Lest peradventure mischief befall him. And the sons of Israel came to buy corn from among those that came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the earth. Joseph meets his brethren, first accusation of being spies. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, and made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them, and said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan, to buy food. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew him not. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed, and said unto them, Ye are spies, to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. Their answer to Joseph. And they said unto him, Nay, my lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. We are all one man's sons. We are true men. Thy servants are no spies. The second time he accuses them of being spies. And he said unto them, Nay, but to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. Second answer to Joseph. They said, Thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. Demand proof of them that they are not spies. And Joseph said unto them, That is it that I spake unto you, saying, Ye are spies. Hereby you shall be proved. By the life of Pharaoh you shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither. Send one of you, and let him fetch your brother, and you shall be kept in prison, that your words may be proved, whether there be any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh ye are spies. Joseph jails his brethren. And he put them all together into ward 3 days. And Joseph said unto them the 3rd day, This do and live, for I fear God. Joseph again demands proof that they are not spies. If you be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your houses, but bring your youngest brother unto me, and so shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so. They had some remorse now over their past over their past sins. And they said one to another, we are guilty, verily guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. And Reuben answered them, saying, Spake I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against a child, and ye would not hear? Therefore behold, also his blood is required. Simeon's bound for security. And they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by an interpreter. And he turned himself about from them and wept, and returned to them again, and communed with them, and took from them Simeon, and bound him before their eyes. They returned to Canaan. Then Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn, and to restore every man's money into his sack, and to give them provisions for the way, and thus did he unto them. And they laded their asses with the corn, and departed thence. And as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender in the end, he espied his money, for behold, it was in his sack's mouth. And he said unto his brethren, My money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. And their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, What is this that God hath done unto us? The report to Jacob. And they came unto Jacob their father into the land of Canaan, and told him all that befell them, saying, The man who is the Lord of the land spake roughly to us, and took us for spies of the country. And we said unto him, We are true men, we are no spies. We be 12 brethren, sons of our father. One is not, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. And the man, the Lord of the country, said unto us, Hereby shall I know that ye are true men. Leave one of your brethren here with me, and take food for the famine of your households, and be gone, and bring your youngest brother unto me. Then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that ye are true men. So will I deliver your brother, and you shall traffic in the land. And it came to pass, as they emptied their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when both they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. The sorrow of Jacob. And Jacob their father said unto them, Me have ye bereaved of my children? Joseph is not, and Simeon is not, and you will take Benjamin away. All these things are against me. And Reuben spake unto his father, saying, Slay my 2 sons, if I bring him not to thee, and deliver him into my hand, and I will deliver him to thee again. And he said, My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. And if mischief befall him by the way in the which ye go, then shall ye bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. Chapter 43. The decision to return to Egypt. The famine was sore in the land, and it came to pass, when they had eaten up the corn which they had brought out of Egypt, their father said unto them, Go again and buy us a little food. Jacob is persuaded to meet the demands of Joseph. And Judah spake unto him, saying, The man did solemnly protest unto us, saying, You shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. If thou wilt send our brother with us, we will go down and buy thee food. But if thou wilt not send him, we will not go down. For the man said unto us, Ye shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. And Israel said, Wherefore dealt ye so ill with me, as to tell the man whether ye had yet a brother? And they said, The man asked us straightly of our state and of our kindred, saying, Is your father yet alive? Have ye another brother? And we told him according to the tenor of these words. Could we certainly know that he would say, Bring your brother down? And Judah said unto Israel his father, Send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and thou, and also our little ones. I will be surety for him. Of my hand shalt thou require him, if I bring him not unto thee, and set him before thee, and let me bear the blame forever. For except we had lingered, surely now we had returned the second time. And their father Israel said unto them, If it must be so, now do this. Take of the best fruits of the land in your vessels, and carry down the man a present, a little balm, a little honey, spices and myrrh, nuts and almonds. And take double money in your hand, and the money that was brought again in the mouth of your sacks, carry it again in your hand, peradventure it was an oversight. Take also your brother, and arise, and go again unto the man. And God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may send away your other brother and Benjamin. If I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. The second trip down to Egypt. And the men took that present, and they took double money in their hand in Benjamin, and rose up and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the ruler of his house, Bring these men home, and slay and make ready, for these men shall dine with me at noon. And the man did as Joseph bade, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house, their fear and humility. And the men were afraid, because they were brought into Joseph's house, and they said, Because of the money that was returned in our sacks at the first time are we brought in, that he may seek occasion against us, and befall upon us, and take us for bondmen and our asses. And they came near to the steward of Joseph's house, and they communed with him at the door of the house, and said, O sir, we came indeed down at the first time to buy food, and it came to pass, when we came to the end that we opened our sacks. Behold, every man's money was in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight, and we have brought it again in our hand. And other money have we brought down in our hands to buy food. We cannot tell who put our money in our sacks. And he said, Peace be to you, fear not, for your God and the God of your father hath given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money. And he brought Simeon out unto them. And the man brought the men into Joseph's house, and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave them asses provender. And they made ready the present against Joseph came at noon, for they heard that they should eat bread there. Their meeting with Joseph. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house, and bowed themselves to the earth, to him to the earth. And he asked them of their welfare, and said, Is your father well? The old man of whom you spake, is he yet alive? And they answered, Thy servant our father is in good health, he is yet alive. And they bowed their heads and worshipped, and made obeisance. Rather, they bowed down their heads and made obeisance. And he lifted up his eyes, and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, Is this your younger brother of whom you spake unto me? And they said, he said, God be gracious unto thee, my son. Joseph weeps. And Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn upon his brother, and he sought where to weep. And he entered into his chamber, and wept there. And he washed his face, and went out, and refrained himself, and said, Set on bread, the banquet with Joseph. And they set on for him by himself, and for them by themselves, and for the Egyptians which did eat with him by themselves, because the Egyptians might not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination unto the Egyptians. And they set before him the firstborn according to his birthright, and the younger according to his youth. And the men marveled one at another, and he took and sent messes unto them before him. But Benjamin's mess was 5 times so much as any of theirs, and they drank and were merry with him. Their feigned dismissal. Genesis chapter 44. And he commanded the steward of his house, saying, Fill the men's sacks with food as much as they can carry, and put every man's money in his sack's mouth. And put my cup, the silver cup, in the sack's mouth of the youngest, and his corn money. And he did according to the word that Joseph had spoken. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away, they and their asses. And when they were gone out of the city, and not yet far off, Joseph said unto his steward, Up, follow after the men, and when thou dost overtake them, say unto them, Wherefore have ye rewarded evil for good? Is not this it in which my Lord drinketh, and whereby indeed he divineth? Ye have done evil in so doing. And he overtook them, and he spake unto them these same words. And they said unto him, Wherefore saith my Lord these words? God forbid that thy servant should do according to this saying. Behold, the money which we found in our sacks' mouths we brought again unto thee out of the land of Canaan. How then should we steal out of thy Lord's house silver or gold? With whomsoever of thy servants it be found, both let him die, and we also will be my Lord's bondmen. And he said, Now let it be according to your words. He with whom the cup, whom it shall be found, shall be my servant, and ye shall be blameless. Then they speedily took down every man his sack to the ground, and opened every man his sack, and he searched, and began at the eldest, and left off at the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack, and they rent their clothes and laded every man his ass and returned to the city. The explanation to Joseph. And Judah and his brethren came to Joseph's house, for he was yet there, and they fell before him on the ground. And Joseph said unto them, What deed is this that ye have done? Wot ye not that a man such as I can certainly divine? And Judah said, What shall we say unto my Lord? What shall we speak, or how shall we be clear ourselves? God hath found out the iniquity of thy servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also in whom the cup is found. And he said, God forbid that I should do so, but the man in whose hand the cup is found, he shall be my servant. And as for you, get you up in peace unto your father. Judah's heartbreaking plea. Then Judah came near unto him and said, O my Lord, let thy servant, I pray thee, speak a word in my Lord's ears, and let not thine anger burn against thy servant, for thou art even as Pharaoh. My Lord asked his servant, saying, Have ye a father or a brother? And we said unto my Lord, We have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age, a little one, and his brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother, and his father loveth him. And thou saidst unto thy servants, Bring him down unto me, that I may set my eyes upon him. And we said unto my Lord, The lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. And thou saidst unto thy servants, Except your youngest brother come down with you, ye shall see my face no more. And it came to pass, when we came up, and to thy servant my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And our father said, Go again and buy us a little food. And we said, We cannot go down. If our youngest brother be with us, then will we go down. For we may not see the man's face, except our youngest brother be with us. And thy servant my father said unto us, You know that my wife bare me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and I said, Surely he is torn in pieces, and I saw him not since. And if you take this also from me, and mischief befall him, you shall bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. Now therefore, when I come to thy servant my father, and the lad be not with us, seeing that his life is bound up in the lad's life, it shall come to pass, when he seeth that the lad is not with us, that he will die, and thy servant shall bring down the gray hairs of thy servant our father with sorrow to the grave. For thy servant became surety for the lad unto my father, saying, If I bring him not unto thee, then I shall bear the blame to my father forever. Now therefore I pray thee, let thy servant abide instead of the lad, a bondman to my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brethren. For how shall I go up to my father, and the lad be not with me, lest peradventure I see the evil that shall come upon my father. The elevation of Joseph, the famed statesman. The revelation of Joseph. Number 1. One night, 2 years later, Pharaoh experienced 2 mysterious dreams. The contents of the first dream: he was standing on the bank of the Nile River, when suddenly 7 sleek, fat cows came up out of the river and began grazing in the grass. Then 7 other cows came up, but they were very skinny, and all their ribs stood out. Suddenly, the skinny cows ate the fat cows. Genesis 41, verse 1 through 4. Number 2, the contents of the second dream: he saw 7 heads of grain on one stalk, with every kernel well formed and plump. Then suddenly 7 more heads appeared on the stalk, but these were shriveled and withered by the east wind. The dream ended as the thin ears devoured the plump ones. Genesis 41, verse 5 through 7. Pharaoh consults his magicians about these dreams the next morning, but they are unable to interpret them. Genesis 41, verse 8. Number C. The butler suddenly remembers the amazing talents of Joseph and relates to Pharaoh those events which occurred in the prison 2 years back about the butler and the baker's dreams. Genesis 41, verse 9 through 13. D. Joseph is cleaned up, shaven, and brought before Pharaoh. After hearing the contents of the dreams, he immediately interprets them, giving God the glory. According to Joseph, the dreams mean the same thing. Genesis 41, verse 14 through 25. Number 1. The 7 fat cows and the 7 plump heads of grain meant that there were 7 years of prosperity ahead. Genesis 41:26. Number 2. The 7 skinny cows and the lean heads of grain meant that 7 years of famine period would follow the years of plenty. Genesis 41, verse 27. E. Joseph then advises Pharaoh to appoint a capable administrator over a nationwide farm program and divide Egypt into 5 districts. The officials of these districts should then gather into the royal storehouses all the excess crops of the next 7 years. Genesis 41 through 33 through 36. The elevation of Joseph. A. The Pharaoh appoints Joseph to this high office on the spot. He then, number 1, places his own signet ring on Joseph's finger. 2, he dresses him in a beautiful clothing. 3, he hangs the royal golden chain about his neck. 4, gives him the chariot of his second in command. Number 5, decrees all shall bow down to him. 6, changes his name to Zaphnath-Paneah, which means the one who furnishes the substance of the land, or abundance of life, or the Savior of the world. Number 7, presents him with a wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. Joseph thus marries into a family of high nobility, his father-in-law being a major priest politician of the time. Joseph is now 30 years of age, Genesis 41, verse 46. In one day he has been elevated from the prison to the palace, but it has taken God 13 years to bring him to the place of service, for he was 17 years old when he first arrived in Egypt. We're going to read Psalms here. Psalm chapter 105, verse 17 through 21. Ministry of Joseph in Egypt, 2 acts of God. He sent a man before them, even Joseph, who was sold for a servant, whose feet they hurt with fetters. He was laid in iron, until the time that his word came. The word of the Lord tried him. The king sent and loosed him, even the ruler of the people, and let him go free. He made him lord of his house and ruler of all his substance, to bind his princes at his pleasure and teach his senators wisdom. Joseph's wife presents him with 2 boys. The first is named Manasseh, meaning made to forget, and the second, or the younger, Ephraim, meaning fruitful. Genesis 40, verse 50 and 52. As Joseph had predicted, the 7 fat years were followed by 7 lean ones, causing people from many lands to buy their food in Egypt. Genesis 41, verse 53 through 57. The consternation of Joseph's brothers. Genesis 42 through 44. Jacob sends his 10 older sons into Egypt from Hebron to buy food. Genesis 42, verse 1 through 5. They arrive in Egypt and bow low before Joseph, but do not recognize him, thus fulfilling his dream some 20 years back. Genesis 42, verse 6. Joseph does not reveal himself at first, but accuses them of being foreign spies. The frightened brothers attempt to convince him otherwise. Genesis 42, verse 7 through 13. He throws them into jail for 3 days and then releases them, but keeps Simeon as a hostage until they can return with Benjamin, as he demands they bring him to him. Genesis 42, verse 14 through 20. The terrified brothers acknowledge to each other that their present misfortunes have doubtless been caused by the terrible sin committed 20 years back, not realizing that Joseph can understand every word. Genesis 42, verse 21 through 23. After leaving the room to weep, he orders his servants to fill the men's sacks with grain, and also to put each brother's payment at the top of his sack. The 9 then start for home. Genesis 42, verse 24 through 26. En route home, one of the men discover his payment, and when they reach Hebron, the rest find theirs and are filled with fear concerning the safety of Simeon. In spite of their earnest pleas, Jacob at first refuses to allow Benjamin to accompany them on a future trip into Egypt. Genesis 42, verse 27 through 38. The famine intensifies in Hebron, and Jacob is forced to allow Benjamin to go back with them into Egypt to buy food. Judah attempts to guarantee the safety of Benjamin. Genesis 43, verse 1 through 14. They again present themselves to Joseph, who takes them to his palace for a feast. The brothers attempt to convince Joseph's household manager that they have not stolen the payment of their former trip. Simeon is released and joins the group. For the first time in 20 years, all 12 brothers are together, but only one is aware of it. Genesis 4:3, 15 through 25. The brothers are fed at a separate table from that of Joseph, but to their amazement he seats them in order of their ages, giving Benjamin 5 times as much food as the others. Genesis 43, verse 26 through 34. Before they return the next morning, Joseph once again secretly places the payment money in each man's sack, along with Joseph's own silver cup at the top of Benjamin's sack. Genesis 44, verse 1 and 2. The brothers have but left the city when they are arrested at Joseph's command and accused of stealing his silver cup. Genesis 44, verse 4 through 6. They quickly deny this charge and agree to serve as slaves if the stolen loot can be found on them. A search quickly reveals the cup in Benjamin's sack. Genesis 44, verse 7 through 12. Standing before Joseph for the third time, Judah steps forward and begs him to accept his life in place of Benjamin. He cheerfully reminds Joseph that their old father Jacob would simply die if anything happened to Benjamin. Genesis 44, verse 13 through 34. The forgiving saint. Genesis 45 through 48. Joseph could not refrain himself before them that stood by him, and he cried, "Cause every man to go out from me." And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brethren, "I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live?" And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. And Joseph said unto his brethren, "Come near to me, I pray you." And they came near. And he said, "I am Joseph your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, that you sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in the which there shall neither be earing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God, and he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Haste ye, and go up to my father, and say unto him, Thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, tarry not. Thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children, and thy children's children, and thy flocks, and thy herds, and all that thou hast. And there will I nourish thee, for yet there are 5 years of famine, lest thou and thy household and all that thou hast come to poverty. And behold, your eyes see in the eyes of my brother Benjamin that it is my mouth that speaketh unto you. Ye shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and of all that ye have seen, and ye shall haste and bring down my father hither. And he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brethren and wept upon them, and after that his brethren talked with him. Pharaoh's invitation. And the fame thereof was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brethren are come. And it pleased Pharaoh well and his servants. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Say unto thy brethren, This do ye. Lade your beast and go, get you into the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households, and come unto me. And I will give you the good land of Egypt, and ye shall eat of the fat of the land. Now thou art commanded, this do ye, take you wagons out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come, and regard not your stuff, for the good of all the land of Egypt is yours. The gifts from Joseph. And the children of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the commandment of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the way. To all of them he gave each man changes of raiment, but unto Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of raiment. And to his father he sent after this manner 10 asses laden with the good things of Egypt, and 10 she-asses laden with corn and bread and meat for his father by the way, the return to Canaan. So he sent his brethren away, and they departed, and he said unto them, See that ye fall not out by the way. And they went up out of Egypt, and came into the land of Canaan, unto Jacob their father, and told him, saying, Joseph is yet alive. and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart fainted, for he believed them not. And they told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said unto them. And when they saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. And Israel said, It is enough. Joseph my son is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die. Chapter 46. Jacob journeys to Egypt. His first stop, Jacob's fourth vision, Abraham's covenant confirmed again in Jacob. And Israel took his journey, and with him all that he had, and came to Beersheba, and offered sacrifices unto the God of his father Isaac. And God spake unto Israel in visions of the night, and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here am I. And he said, I am God, the God of thy father. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation. I will go down with thee into Egypt. I will also surely bring thee up again, and Joseph shall put his hand upon thine eyes. Jacob arrives in Egypt. And Jacob rose up from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried Jacob, their father, and their little ones, and their wives, in the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. And they took their cattle and their goods which they had gotten in the land of Canaan, and came into Egypt. Jacob and all his seed with him, his sons and his sons' sons with him, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his seed brought he with him into Egypt. The sons of Jacob and Leah. And these are the names of the children of Israel which came into Egypt: Jacob and his sons, and Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and the son of Reuben, Hanok, and Phalu, and Hezron, and Carmi. Sons of Simeon, Jemuel, and Jamin, and Oded, and Jachin, and Zophar, and Shael, son of the Canaanitish woman. Sons of Levi, Gershom, Kohath, and Merari. Sons of Judah, and Onan, and Shelah, and Pharez, and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Pharez were Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Issachar, Tola, and Phuvah, and Job, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Sered, Elon, and Jalaleel. These be the sons of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob in Padan Aram, with his daughter Dinah. All the souls of his sons and his daughters were 33. Sons of Jacob and Zilpah. And the sons of Gad, Ziphion, Haggai, Shunai, Ashbon, Eri, and Arodi, and Arai. The sons of Asher, Jemna, and Ishua, and Ishui, and Beriah, Serah, their sister. And the sons of Beriah, Heber, and Michael. These are the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah, his daughter, and these she bare unto Jacob, even 13 souls. Sons of Jacob and Rachel. Sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, Joseph and Benjamin. Unto Joseph, the land of Egypt, were born Manasseh and Ephraim, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bare unto him. And the sons of Benjamin were Bela, and Becher, and Ashbel, Gerar, and Naamah, Eli, Rosh, Mupham, Hupham, and Ard. These are the sons of Rachel, which were born to Jacob. All the souls were 14. The sons of Jacob and Bilhah. And the son of Dan, Hushim. Sons of Naphtali, Jaziel, and Juni, and Jezer, and Shalem. These are the sons of Bilhah, which Laban gave unto Rachel his daughter, and she bare these unto Jacob. All the souls were 7. Summary of Jacob's family. All the souls that came with Jacob into Egypt, which came out of his loins, beside Jacob's sons' wives, all the souls were 66. And the sons of Joseph, which were born him in Egypt, were 2 souls. All the souls of the house of Joseph, which came into Egypt, were 70. Jacob and Joseph united. And he sent Judah before him unto Joseph, to direct his face unto Goshen. And they came into the land of Goshen. And Joseph made ready his chariot, and went up to meet Israel his father to Goshen, and presented himself unto him. And he fell on his neck, and wept on his neck a good while. And Israel said unto Joseph, Now let me die, since I have seen thy face, because thou art yet alive. And Joseph said unto his brethren and to his father's house, I will go up and show Pharaoh, and say unto him, My brethren and my father's house, which were in the land of Canaan, are come unto me. And the men are shepherds, for their trade hath been to feed cattle, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. And it shall come to pass, when Pharaoh shall call you, and shall say, What is your occupation? That you shall say, Thy servant's trade hath been about cattle from our youth even until now, both we and also our fathers, that we may dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination unto the Egyptians. Pharaoh and Jacob's son. Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh and said, My father and my brethren and their flocks and their herds and all that they have are come out of the land of Canaan, and behold, they are in the land of Goshen. And he took some of his brethren and 5 men and presented them unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto his brethren, What is your occupation? They said unto Pharaoh, Thy servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. They said moreover to Pharaoh, For to sojourn in the land are we come, for thy servants have no pasture for their flocks, for the famine is sore in the land of Canaan. Now therefore we pray thee, let thy servants dwell in the land of Goshen. Pharaoh spake unto Joseph, saying, Thy father and thy brethren are come unto thee. The land of Egypt is before thee. In the best of the land make thy father and thy brethren to dwell. In the land of Goshen let them dwell. And if thou knowest any men of activity among them, then make them rule over my cattle. Pharaoh and Jacob meet. And Joseph brought in Jacob his father, and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Jacob, How old art thou? And Jacob said unto Pharaoh, The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, and have not attained unto the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh, and went on out from before him, Pharaoh. Settlement in Ramses. And Joseph placed his father and his brethren, and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. And Joseph nourished his father and his brethren, and all his father's household with bread according to their families. Joseph's policies collects all of the money. And there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Canaan for the corn which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. And when money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, Give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence? For the money faileth. He buys all their cattle. And Joseph said, Give your cattle, and I will give you for your cattle, if money fail. And they brought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses and for flocks, and for the cattle of the herds and for the asses, and he fed them with bread for all the cattle for that year. And when that year was ended, they came unto him the second year, and said unto him, We will not hide it from my lord, how that our money is spent. My lord also hath our herds of cattle. There is not aught left in the sight of my lord, but our bodies and our lands. Wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh. Give us bread, that we may live and not die, and that the land be not desolate. Buys all the lands. And Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, and the Egyptians sold every man his field, because the famine prevailed over them. So the land became Pharaoh's. He moves to the cities. As for the people, he removed them to cities from one end of the borders of Egypt even to the other end thereof. Joseph exempts the priests. Only the land of the priests bought he not, for the priest had a portion assigned them of Pharaoh, and did eat their portion which Pharaoh gave them, wherefore they sold not their lands. Joseph makes tenant laws. Then Joseph said unto the people, Behold, I have bought you this day and your land for Pharaoh. Lo, here is seed for you, and ye shall sow in the land, and it shall come to pass in the increase that ye shall give the fifth part unto Pharaoh, and 4 parts shall be your own, for seed of the field, and for your food, and for them of your households, and for food for your little ones. And they said, Thou hast saved our lives. Let us find grace in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants. And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt unto this day, that Pharaoh should have the 5th part, except the land of the priests only, which became not Pharaoh's. The last days of Jacob's stay in Egypt, his age at death. And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions therein, and grew and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of the Egypt 17 years, and the whole age of Jacob was 147 years. Jacob's charge to Joseph. And the time drew nigh that Israel must die, and he called his son Joseph, and said unto him, If now I have found grace in thy sight, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and deal kindly and truly with me, and bury me not, I pray thee, in Egypt, but I will lie with my fathers, and thou shalt carry me out of Egypt, and bury me in their burying place. And he said, I will do as thou hast said. And he said, Swear unto me. And he sware unto him, and Israel bowed himself upon his head's bed. Forgiving saint. Jacob's sickness. And it came to pass after these things that one told Joseph, Behold, thy father is sick. And he took with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And one told Jacob and said, Behold, thy son Joseph cometh unto thee. And Israel strengthened himself and sat up on the bed. Jacob claims Joseph's sons. Jacob said unto Joseph, God Almighty appeared unto me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and blessed me. And he said unto me, Behold, I will make thee fruitful and multiply thee, and I will make thee a multitude of people, and I will give this land to thy seed after thee for an everlasting possession. And now thy 2 sons Ephraim and Manasseh, which were born unto thee in the land of Egypt, before I came into Egypt, are mine. As Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine. And thy issue, which thou begettest after them, shall be thine, and shall be called after the name of their brethren in their inheritance. And as for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died by me in the land of Canaan in the way, when yet there was but a little way to come unto Ephrath, and I buried her there in the way of Ephrath, the same as Bethlehem. Jacob blesses Joseph and his sons. And Israel beheld Joseph's sons, and said, Who are these? And Joseph said unto his father, These are my 2 sons, whom God hath given me in this place. And he said, Bring them, I pray thee, unto me, and I will bless them. Now the eyes of Israel were dim for age, so that he could not see. And he brought them near unto him, and he kissed them, and embraced them. And Israel said unto Joseph, I had not thought to see thy face, and lo, God has showed me also thy seed. And Joseph brought them out from between his knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near unto him. And Israel stretched out his right hand, and he laid it on Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand upon Manasseh's head, guiding his hands wittingly. For Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph, and said, God, before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac did walk, the God which fed me all my life long unto this day, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and let my name be named on them, and the name of my father Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. And when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand up on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, and he held up his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head unto Manasseh's head. And Joseph said unto his father, Not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Put thy right hand upon his head. And his father refused, and said, I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. And he blessed them that day, saying, In thee shall Israel bless, saying, God make thee as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. And Israel said unto Joseph, Behold, I die, but God shall be with you, and bring you again unto the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to thee 1 portion above thy brethren, which I took out of the hand of the Amorite, with my sword and with my bow. The forgiving saint, Joseph and his brothers. Joseph cannot contain himself any longer and reveals his identity to his brothers. Genesis 45, verse 1 through 3. After a time of tearful reuniting, Joseph informs them that the 2-year drought they have already experienced will continue another 5 years and urges that they bring Jacob back with them and all make plan to live in Egypt. Genesis 45, verse 4 through 15. Joseph reassures his brothers, still in semi-shock. He has no hard feelings, but feels God has overruled their evil plots so as to guarantee Israel will indeed be a great nation. Genesis 45, verse 5 through 8. Pharaoh rejoices along with Joseph over his restored brethren and also invites the entire clan to live in Egypt. Genesis 45, verse 16 through 20. Joseph and his father. The old patriarch Jacob at first cannot comprehend the thrilling news concerning Joseph, but then believes the report and plans his trip to Egypt. Genesis 45, verse 26 through 28. En route to at Beersheba, God reassures Jacob he will still bless him even in Egypt. Jacob is told he is to die there, but God will bring his descendants back to Palestine someday. Genesis 46, verse 1 through 4. Note, there has been some controversy as to whether Jacob's trip to Egypt was God's perfect will or his permissive will. One benefit, however, was the fact that Egypt was a country in which Jacob's descendants would be forced to remain a separate and distinct people, for they were shepherds, and shepherds were an abomination to the Egyptians. Genesis 43, verse 32, and 46, verse 34. There would thus be no intermarriage. In Canaan, this had apparently occurred. Simeon had married a girl from Canaan. Genesis 46, verse 10. Jacob enters Egypt with his entire household. Here 3 separate numbers are given. 66, Genesis 46, verse 26. This was the number of those going down to Egypt, his own descendants, not counting his sons' wives. Number 2, 70, Genesis 46, verse 27. This was the number after adding Jacob himself, Joseph, and Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. 75, verse number 3. Acts chapter 7, verse 14. Here Stephen refers to the kindred, a probable reference to the sons of Ephraim and Manasseh. Joseph and Jacob meet in Goshen for the first time in 22 years. The son is now 39 and the father 130 years of age. Genesis 46, verse 28 through 30. Joseph introduces his father to Pharaoh, and Jacob is given the choice land to live upon. Genesis 47, verse 1 through 12. As the famine continues, Pharaoh becomes richer, and Joseph's wise food administration plan saves untold thousands from outright starvation. Genesis 47, verse 13 through 26. The population of Israel in Goshen rapidly expands in spite of the famine everywhere else. Genesis 47, verse 27. At the age of 147, Jacob realizes his time is near and thus calls for his beloved son Joseph and his favorite grandsons Ephraim and Manasseh. Genesis 48, verse 1. Joseph promises his father he will not be buried in Egypt. Genesis 47, verse 29 through 31. Joseph and his sons. Joseph's 2 sons stand before their grandfather waiting to be blessed. The old man adopts them as his own sons and assures them of an equal inheritance. Genesis 48, verse 3 through 9. Jacob lays his right hand on Ephraim's head and his left hand on Manasseh's head. A displeased Joseph attempts to reverse this, pointing out that Manasseh is older and therefore should have the right hand on his head. Genesis 48, 10 through 18. Jacob refuses to change hands, however, for he predicted the tribe of Ephraim would be even greater than the tribe of Manasseh. Genesis 48, verse 19 through 22. Joseph is a fruitful shade tree. Genesis 49 and 50. And Jacob called unto his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father, concerning Reuben. Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, thou defilest it, and then defilest thou it. He went up to my couch. Simeon and Levi are brethren, instruments of cruelty in their habitation. O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly. Mine honor, be thou not united, for in their anger they slew a man, in their self-will they digged down a wall. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob, and scatter them in Israel. Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion swept from the prey. My son, thou art gone up. He stooped down. He couches a lion. And as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass's colt unto the choice vine. He washed his garments in the wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. Zebulun shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for an haven of ships, and his border shall be unto Zidon. Issachar is a strong ass, couching down between two burdens. And he saw that rest was good, and the land that it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant to tribute. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path that biteth the horse heels, so that his rider shall fall backward. I have waited for thy salvation, O Lord. Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. Out of Asher's his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. Naphtali as a hind let loose, he giveth goodly words. Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. The archers have sorely grieved him, and shot at him, and hated him. But his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. Even by the God of thy father, who shall help thee, and by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with blessings of heaven above, and blessings of the earth, blessings of the heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, and blessings of the breast, blessings of the womb. The blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of thy progenitor unto the utmost bounds of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is it their father spake unto them, and blessed them every one according to his blessing. He blessed them. And he charged them and said unto them, I am to be gathered unto my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field of Ephron the Hittite for a possession of a burying place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. The purchase of the field and of the cave that is therein was from the children of Heth. And when Jacob had made an end of commanding his sons, he gathered up his feet into the bed, and yielded up the ghost, and was gathered unto his people. Chapter 50. And Joseph fell upon his father's face, and wept upon him, and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. And the physicians embalmed Israel, and 40 days were fulfilled for him, for so are fulfilled the days of those which are embalmed. And the Egyptians mourned for him 60 days. And when the days of his mourning were past, Joseph spake unto the house of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found grace in your eyes, speak, I pray you, in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, Lo, I die, in the grave which I have digged for me in the land of Canaan, there shalt thou bury me. Now therefore let me go up, I pray thee, and bury my father, and I will come again. And Pharaoh said, Go up and bury thy father, according as he made thee swear. And Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, and all the house of Joseph and his brethren, and his father's house, only their little ones, and their flocks and their herds, only they left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great company. And they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond Jordan. And there they mourned with a great and very sore lamentation, and he made a mourning for his father 7 days. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning in the floor of Atad, they said, This is a grievous mourning to the Egyptians. Wherefore the name of it was called Abel Mizraim, which is beyond Jordan. Abel Mizraim means mourning among the Egyptians, consisted of abstaining from customary ablutions, wines, and ointments, in avoiding all luxury in eating, all comfort in garments, in covering the head with ashes, in allowing the hair of the head and the beard to grow, and in lamentations twice daily, usually accompanied by paid mourners. Praise God. And his sons did unto him according as he commanded, for his sons carried him into the land of Canaan, and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, which Abraham had bought with a field for possession of a burying place of Ephraim the Hittite before Mamre. And Joseph returned unto Egypt, he and his brethren, and all that went with him to bury his father, and after he had buried him. And when Joseph's brethren saw that their father was dead, they said, Joseph will peradventure hate us, and will certainly requite us all the evil which we did unto him. And they sent a messenger unto Joseph, saying, Thy father did command before he died, saying, So shall ye say unto Joseph, Forgive, I pray thee, now the trespass of thy brethren in their sin, for they did unto thee evil. And now we pray thee, forgive the trespass of thy servants of God of thy father. And Joseph wept when they spake unto him. And his brethren also went and fell down before his face, and they said, Behold, we be thy servants. And Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive. Now therefore fear ye not. I will nurse you and your little ones. And he comforted them, and spake kindly unto them. And Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's house. And Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation, the children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were brought upon Joseph's knees. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I die, and God will surely visit you, and bring you out of this land into the land which he sware to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones from hence. And Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him and put him in a coffin in Egypt. The forgiving saint. Verse 40, the fruitful shade tree. Genesis 49 and 50. Joseph receives his father's blessing. Genesis 49. See also Hebrews 11:21. Jacob gathers his 12 sons around his bedside just before his death, that I may tell you what shall befall you in the latter days. Genesis 49:1. The New Scofield Bible has the following note on this verse. This is the first occurrence of the term the last days, a most important concept in biblical prophecy. In general, the expression refers to that terminal period in history of a particular group of people or nations when God announced purpose for them is about to be consummated. Jacob then pronounces the following prophecies upon Reuben, Genesis 49, verse 3 and 4. He was as unruly as the wild waves of the sea. As the firstborn, he entitled a double share of honor and inheritance, Deuteronomy 21:17. But Jacob passes him over because of his immorality with Bilhah, Jacob's own concubine, Genesis 35, verse 22. Number 2. The Reubenites later settled east of Jordan, along with the tribe of Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh. See Joshua chapter 1, verse 12 through 16.